Help me hit 7,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. Thank you. My name is Daniel. I'm 42. And until recently, I thought marriage meant loyalty, laughter, and small imperfections you learn to live with. What I didn't realize was how slowly embarrassment can turn into distance, and how silence can hurt louder than shouting. It started at a friend's dinner party. Nothing fancy, just 8 of us gathered around a long wooden table, sharing wine and stories from college. My wife, Claire, had always been the graceful one in our group. Sharp, stylish, confident. I used to love that about her. That night, though, her grace came with sharp edges. I cracked a harmless joke about burning a frozen pizza last week, and everyone laughed. Except her. She leaned toward me and whispered, "Could you not make yourself sound like an idiot in front of everyone?" I tried to brush it off, but the laughter around me suddenly felt distant. When dessert was served, she stood up and said loudly, "Daniel, why don't you sit at the other end? You're blocking the serving tray." There was no tray near me. Everyone noticed. My face burned, but I smiled anyway and quietly moved to the far end of the table. That's when I first realized humiliation doesn't need to be public to sting. It just needs to come from the person you love most. I sat there pretending to check my phone, nodding at conversations I wasn't part of. The music felt louder on my side, maybe because it drowned out my thoughts. Then, out of nowhere, someone pulled out the chair next to me. It was a woman I hadn't met before. Red hair, green eyes, and a half-smile that didn't feel forced. "Mind if I join you?" she asked. I said sure, trying to sound casual. She introduced herself as Natalie, a coworker of the host who'd arrived late. She looked at the untouched dessert plate in front of me and said, "Not hungry, or trying to make a statement?" I laughed softly. "Maybe both." She grinned. "Let me guess. You said something funny, and your wife didn't approve?" That caught me off guard. "How do you know she's my wife?" I asked. "She's been glaring at us for the past 2 minutes," Natalie said with a smirk. I turned slightly and saw Claire across the room, mid-conversation, pretending not to watch. Her jaw was tight. I felt something strange then. Not attraction, not rebellion, just relief. Someone had finally noticed me without judgment. Natalie talked about everything and nothing. Books, travel, why people pretend to be happier than they are. I listened more than I spoke, and for the first time that evening I felt relaxed. It wasn't flirtation. It was connection, simple and uncalculated. When the party ended, Claire walked over, smiling too widely. "Ready to go, sweetheart?" she said. Her tone sugar-coated but her eyes cold. On the drive home, she didn't speak for the first 10 minutes. Then she said, "Do you enjoy embarrassing me?" I asked what she meant. "You were laughing too loud," she snapped. "And then you sat with that woman like some lonely bachelor." I reminded her she'd told me to sit there. She rolled her eyes. "It was a joke, Daniel." God, you're so sensitive. That word again, sensitive. She'd been using it like an insult lately, as if empathy were a weakness. When we got home, she went straight to the bedroom. I stayed in the kitchen, staring at the half-empty wine glass she'd left behind. My reflection in it looked tired, smaller somehow. Over the next few days, something shifted. She became polite, dangerously polite, the kind of tone people use when they've stopped caring enough to argue. Every small thing turned into proof that I was an embarrassment. How I dressed, how I spoke to waiters, how I laughed during movies. I started to shrink around her without realizing it. Then one evening, she invited friends over again. Same circle, same laughter, but this time I barely said a word. When they left, she said, "See, much better tonight. You didn't make me uncomfortable." That night, as I lay beside her in bed, wide awake, I wondered if comfort should ever come at the cost of your dignity. And the next morning, I'd get an unexpected answer, because the woman from that dinner party, Natalie, wasn't done crossing my path yet. 3 days after that dinner, I stopped at a cafe near my office for a quick coffee before a meeting. I almost turned back when I saw her, Natalie, sitting by the window with a laptop and the same half-smile that had disarmed me the first time. She waved. "The man who doesn't eat dessert." Sit for a minute. I hesitated, then did. We talked again about work, life, the small absurdities that make days tolerable. There was an ease between us, the kind that doesn't ask for performance. When I checked the time, 40 minutes had vanished. I told her I had to go. She said, "Next time, the coffee's on me," and smiled like she meant it. That afternoon, I kept thinking about how light the conversation had felt and how heavy home had become. It wasn't about attraction. It was about contrast, the difference between being heard and being tolerated. When I came home that night, Claire was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone. "You're late," she said without looking up. I told her I'd stopped for coffee. "With who?" she asked, her tone casual but her eyes sharp. I said a coworker. That wasn't entirely true, and the half-truth tasted bitter. She nodded slowly. "Just remember you're married," she said. "Some people forget." I wanted to tell her that I hadn't forgotten. I'd been trying to remember what being married was supposed to feel like, but I said nothing. Silence was safer. Days passed. I saw Natalie again, purely by chance. Once at the grocery store, once outside the gym. Each time, the conversations were short but genuine. She never pried, never flirted, never crossed a line. Yet every exchange reminded me that warmth still existed somewhere. One evening, Claire and I attended another gathering. Different house, same crowd. This time, I decided to stay invisible. I laughed when appropriate, spoke only when spoken to. Halfway through the night, Claire leaned in and said, "See? You can behave." Something cracked inside me then, not loud, but final. I realized she didn't want a partner. She wanted an accessory, someone quiet, polished, unthreatening. On the way home, she scrolled through her phone again, smiling at messages that weren't from me. I stared out the window at the city lights and wondered when companionship had become a performance review. The next morning, she left early for a brunch with friends. I stayed home, cleaning the kitchen just to occupy the emptiness. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A text from Natalie. "Hey, random question. Do you ever feel like people forget to see each other?" I didn't know how to answer that, so I typed the truth. "Every day lately." We met later that week at the same cafe. She told me she was moving to another city for a job. "Fresh start," she said. "You should try it sometime." Her words hit deeper than she probably intended. A fresh start. I'd been living on autopilot, convincing myself that quiet misery was maturity. When I got home that night, Claire was sitting at the dining table. "Your friend texted me," she said flatly. "She wanted to let me know she's moving. Isn't that sweet?" I felt my stomach drop. She must have gone through my phone. "She seems to think you're unhappy," Claire continued. "Maybe she's right. Maybe we both are." For a moment, I thought she was about to apologize. Instead, she said, "Maybe you should figure yourself out before embarrassing me again." That was the moment clarity replaced anger. I looked at her, the woman I'd shared 15 years with, and realized I no longer needed her permission to exist comfortably. I packed a bag that night. Not all of it, just enough to signal this wasn't a threat. It was a decision. She didn't stop me. She just watched, arms folded, as if daring me to follow through. I stayed at a small motel for a few days, sorting my thoughts. The silence there felt different, peaceful, not punishing. I called a lawyer, not to file anything yet, just to ask questions. Then I wrote a message to Claire. "You told me once that I embarrass you. Maybe the real embarrassment is staying in something that makes us both smaller." No reply ever came. Weeks later, I got an email from Natalie. Just a photo of a sunrise over a new city and a single line. "Fresh starts look better than they sound." I smiled for the first time in months. Sometimes the distance someone forces between you is the space you need to remember who you are. I used to think love meant staying no matter what. Now I think it means respecting yourself enough to leave when staying becomes an act of disappearance. And if that means sitting far away, then so be it, because sometimes the farthest seat in the room is the closest one to peace.